Well, entering into very soon the day of Yom Kippur, we've got a special time with Hanok Young. Is you're just hours away from your day, this very special day, but little news going on, things happening in Israel. I see you got a
What?
breeze, or is that
No,
just
there is a breeze.
okay?
Temperatures are only around 84, 85.
Uh,
So it's cooled off.
okay,
Again, remember, the Israeli summer is like, Death Valley,
yeah,
and our
I
summer
know,
goes on for half a year.
yeah,
Actually, for whatever reason, I looked at the weather forecast for tomorrow, and they're talking about the possibility of rain in Modi'in,
wow,
which is like, I want to live to see it happen. Okay, this is and rain could be like 45 seconds. You could time it, and it's like it's finished.
yeah.
So you don't know.
Yeah, but I
Okay,
mean, this is the whole thing that maybe a new listener doesn't understand much about Israel. That Israel does not get rain until after
oh,
Sukkot, and so
yeah,
any rain that happens during the time between Pesach and Sukkot is kind of a known as a special blessing from the heavens.
yeah. It's very unusual. Um, Before we get into Yom Kippur, let me update you on a couple of things happening here. Those 6 terrorists who had gotten out of Gilboa prison,
Yeah,
we have recaptured 4 of them. We're still looking for the other 2. Just a little bit of a backstory on that. There are a couple of things that have popped up on the social media saying, look, the police were tipped off by Israeli Arabs in Nazareth, for the last 2. And everyone is saying, see how loyal they are. And it's like my head wants to explode because just a few months ago, Israeli Arabs were rioting in Lud. And okay, what wasn't picked up in the same news reports to people is that the police received hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of false reports
uh,
by Israeli Arabs to guide them away from where these terrorists were. So, and again, remember, these are not political prisoners. We don't have those.
yeah,
These are people with Jewish blood on their hands. These are real
yeah.
hardcore terrorists. Speaking of terrorists, we had a terror attack in Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, the other day. 2 Haredi teenagers, young men, were stabbed in the back and in the head by an Arab terrorist. Now, the thing that's amazing, this is right near the Tachana Merkazit, the central bus station.
Okay,
So, there was absolutely no doubt that this terrorist was going to be shot. And sure enough, he ran into a store. Women of the Mishmar Hagvul, the border police, came in and shot him right on the spot. Unfortunately, it appears that he's lived.
oh,
Okay.
okay,
Lots of other, stories behind the stories. Prime Minister Bennett met with Egypt's head Sisi in
mm-hmm.
Sharm el Sheikh. Lots of stuff going on. What exactly at this time? We don't know. But Bennett stated very clearly the other day that he's not going to be meeting with Mahmoud Abbas
Yeah,
because he's not a partner in peace. And the PA, the Palestinian Authority, is a failed organization. And he said very clearly, there will be no Palestinian state.
wow,
In contrast to his predecessor, Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay. Remember Ben and Jerry's? Well,
mm-hmm.
that saga is long from over. People say, Ben and Jerry. Oh, wow. I thought that. No.
Yeah,
There are several American states that have legislation that is triggered when a company boycotts Israel.
mm-hmm.
This is in contrast to the BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And for any of our listeners who don't know what that means, shame on you at this point. because that information is out there, and you all need, Israel's not just up in the clouds and in the Bible, it's real, and you all need to get up to speed, he said lovingly. Okay. Arizona is the first state to trigger that. And from all their state pension funds and stuff, they're divesting $143 million from Unilever stock. That's the company that owns Ben & Jerry's.
Right.
So this is where, money talks. And I just saw a note just a few hours ago that it appears that New Jersey is about to do something similar. There are several other states, including Texas, New York, and I think Illinois, that have similar legislation. We'll see what happens. When you start losing hundreds of millions of dollars, it puts a different shade on things. Tonight, which is all of about 3.5 hours from now, is Yom Kippur, the quote unquote Day of Atonement. It is the 48th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War of 1973. And that war and its aftermath is what caused me as a teenager to begin getting involved in Jewish activism. But that's a story for another day. I mentioned kind of a little bit of a tease the other day that I see it differently. Yom Kippur. People look at Yom Kippur and they fast and they pray, and they're all torn up inside because they're begging Hashem to forgive them. It's very common for people to wish each other an easy fast. Let me tell you something. If your fasting is easy, there's no point in done it. Part of it is to afflict your soul. Part of it is to keep you, like when we're all sitting there saying like, wow, Mike, you got to pull off the next exit because I'm starving. Are you really starving? I don't think so. I see this time period as a performance appraisal. When I worked in corporate America, Exxon, Johnson & Johnson, PepsiCo, every year in the corporate setting, there would be a performance appraisal where your manager, she or he, has written out there's a whole series of documentation where you're rated on all kinds of things. And when I was a manager, I always had a policy saying there should never be any surprises at your performance appraisal. You should be getting feedback all along. We as individuals don't think of that in the same way outside of the corporate setting. We really think we can get one over on Hashem and then ask for forgiveness. We don't have that concept. It's like when I had Mardi Gras explained to me for the very first time, and this woman then asked me, she was drunk, she was called over to the table where I was sitting saying, this is our friend from Israel, can you explain to, because she came in, wearing all the wreaths and all that stuff and she said, tell me what you heard and we'll see if you understood it. So I said, basically, you're telling me during this period of time, since it's before Lent, where you give something up, you're going to cram in as much sin as you possibly can in this time period. Yeah. And she looked at me and said, you're not a foreigner, you get it. Yeah. So, by the way, I came back from America on that trip, and I suggested to friends that in Israel, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we cram in as much sin as we can because no, that doesn't work on our side of the family. No, not at all. When we use the term, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. Go ahead, and I'll add a little later.
Okay. The prayer that I shared on Facebook the other day,
Mm-hmm.
Unetana Tokef, when it says at the very end, Utshuva, Utfila, Utstaka, Ma'avirin et roa hagzera. But tshuva, we'll get back to define that. Tfilah, prayer, and staka, let's loosely call it charity. I think it's paying, kind of paying what's due, what you owe, which is a little different than the way people think of it, can avert the evil or the bad, the negative decree. Tshuva, Rav Kook spoke of tshuva as returning to yourself.
Yeah.
I see that as meaning that each of us were put on this earth for a particular reason or a series of reasons. And this is a reminder that we need to be true to ourselves. It's not just that we need to be true to Hashem. We need to be true to ourselves. We have responsibilities. We have responsibilities to family, to friends, to congregations. Those things tend to go right by the side. People tend not to think twice about buying some, big, expensive new toy for themselves. But what about their congregations? Mm-hmm. What about the widows and the elderly and the orphans in their community? Is everyone situated well? So when we get through this Yom Kippur and we approach Shabbat, is everyone going to be sitting down at that Shabbat table with lots of goodies to eat for their family? And if not, where do you get off doing that? And it's a responsibility to yourself and to your mission, and to be all you can be all that you can be. That's, of course, that worked for you, Mike. It got you in there. And think of it, if you had been in the Army, poor Kathy Clayton wouldn't have had such a good-looking young husband. Okay, really.
Well, yeah.
It is what it is.
Appreciate the plug there. Let's go back a little ways, okay? It's interesting to me to listen to you about Yom Kippur because, theologically, we come from different spectrums.
Yeah, you can say that.
Just slightly. We come from just totally different spectrums, but yet we're walking in the same direction. And when you said that, you do not wish someone an easy fast, I've said that also within the last week, that if you have an easy fast, then you missed the point. This is not supposed to be, easy in a way. It should be something that we're desiring to do, to spend this time away from the things of this world, the things of life. And so that disconnect should be something that we actually are looking forward to. But if you come to the end of the day and it's like, there's no big deal, maybe you missed something along the way. So I'm not sure if easy and hard are the appropriate words, but I would wish people a meaningful fast, one that is worth what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And if you, it's
without a doubt,
it's like the Mardi Gras thing. If you're 5 o'clock today, you go to the Chinese buffet and stuff yourself to the point that you're, kind of almost overflowing, you've missed the point. I think, a very simple meal going into this time. And then on the other end is shouldn't this should the fast of Yom Kippur should not be bookends of the fast at or the buffet at the Chinese restaurant and then the buffet at Western Sizzler or something. It should be something we kind of approach with a holy attitude going into it and coming out of it. And you froze up there. One of those.
Yeah.
Are you back?
One of those times.
Yeah,
I tried to, as you froze on your end, I tried to keep my expression, instead of going, something, crazy.
Yeah, I know.
But no, you're right. And people, it's a classic case of missing the point. And then you become sort of a practitioner of folklore as opposed to doing something that's supposed to be meaningful to each and every one of us with Hashem. This is one-on-one time. And it's not that long ago. God, it was last year. We were in lockdown here. And it's for all that people bemoan that, and it was a very difficult situation, and that was I think it was the second of four whatever. You kind of you need a scorecard to keep track of the lockdowns. Yeah. Fortunately, we're not doing that now. But people really, really miss the point, and they really miss it's interesting. I wrote a blog post, but I didn't publish it yet, called Reassess, Refocus, Return. And I held off putting it up for a very simple reason. Many people right before Yom Kippur are thinking in that direction. I'm going to post this right afterwards. When people are like, whoa, that's done. No. This is when it's just beginning. This is a chance for new beginnings. How many of us have the opportunity for a new beginning, to reinvent ourselves, to say, this year, looking back on it, this is what I did well, and this is where I fell short. And what am I going to do this year to make sure that those areas are repaired and there's a full restoration of what I'm supposed to be doing?
I put up a post on Facebook this morning, and I really spent a lot of time in the last few days trying to figure this out of what I wanted to say on this day. And it finally came to me last night. So I put up this morning, each man shall give an account for the book his life writes. Yom Kippur is known as the day that the books are open. What would be the title of the book that we've written? Wow. Which section of the library would that, if you were to, in the end, have to take the book that your life has written, and each one of us has, our life is a story. What section of the library would that book be put into? Would it be put into the comedy section? The comics? Would it be stuck over in miscellaneous, really no meaning book? Would it be, horror, science fiction? What would it be? I think that,
it's a great question.
We need to be looking at that. Yeah, I just kind of thought of that as I was talking there, of that book that we are all writing. What do we want that to be in the end? So Yom Kippur to me is a day. I just taught this at our congregation the other day. Yom Kippur is a day of reflection. It's a time of reflection about our past, about our future, about the day that we stand before Hashem, and the books are open, and then he pulls out this book from the side and says, and by the way, I'd like to discuss the book that you wrote. And by the way, I have another book here, and this is the book that I had written for you. This is the life here in this book that I had written that would be your life. And here's the one you wrote. How close are those two books going to line up?
It's a wonderful analogy. It really is. And following on the theme of writing a book, that final chapter, as long as you have life in your body, that final chapter still can be written any way that you want. And think of it as taking Hashem's copy and editing it into your life.
Mm-hmm. You know, I remember years ago a sermon in a church, Nazarene church in Tucson, Arizona. Pastor Lyndall Watson was my first pastor. And he got up one night and he talked about a man who had been invited to a theater. And he walked in, and the theater was it was totally vacant except for him. He was the only person in the whole theater. And he sat there and he was watching this movie. And this movie was incredible. It was this wonderful, not to coin the phrase from the Christmas time, but it was this wonderful life. It was a life of meaning and impact, and it had all kinds of challenges and victories and overcoming and all this. And finally, someone walked into the theater and said, "Sir," and the guy said, "Sir, who's this movie about?" And the guy said, "Well, that's the movie that your life was planned to be."
Wow.
But it never made the cut. That to me is Yom Kippur. Refocus, yes. Rededication, yes. But if the decisions that are made, it's kind of like New Year's Eve. Let's don't make Yom Kippur resolutions that are broken before Sukkot comes.
Yeah.
So 48 years.
Absolutely.
48 years ago, Yom Kippur War. It's so long ago. What are your thoughts on that war? And how does that war today affect life in Israel, or does it?
Okay. It still does. It is tremendous reverberations. First of all, when Israeli military intelligence finally stopped patting themselves on the back. Remember, it was only 6 years after the 6-Day War.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, we're the baddest cats in town. It was finally obvious that Israel was going to be attacked. Golda Meir, our prime minister, relented under American pressure not to launch a preemptive strike, essentially dooming all those young men at the Suez Canal and in the Golan Heights to die. It was a horrific time here in Israel. I was just reviewing, there was a melody that was made by a composer for that prayer, Unatana Tokef. He was commissioned by a kibbutz up north as a memorial because they had lost 11 young men in the war. A kibbutz, a small community. It was there wasn't a family in Israel that didn't suffer a loss or knew someone that died. It eventually led to the government of Golda Meir of her resigning after the follow-up election, and a few years later, Menachem Begin, Alav Shalom, a blessed memory, coming in as prime minister. It changed things very radically in Israel. It also gave a sense in the Arab world that over time we could be defeated. Because in 1967, they were humiliated beyond belief. Now, although we were reeling in the first couple of days, we could have marched on to both Damascus and Cairo.
Sure.
But that was the height of Soviet and Nixonian American, tug of war, but in current terms, the American, I don't know whether you call it withdrawal, retreat, surrender in Afghanistan, fleeing their helter-skelter, it has reinforced in the world that sense among Islamists that in time they will be victorious.
Oh, yeah.
And there's another lesson, by the way. I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Another lesson came out of Afghanistan that I was reading about this recently. Israel is challenged by fighting proxies. Hezbollah and Hamas. Eventually, we have to deal with Iran.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot fight a war against proxies.
Yeah.
America was fighting the Taliban. America refused to hold Pakistan accountable for shielding the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. I mean, remember, Osama bin Laden was not killed in Afghanistan. He was killed in Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are the lessons keep unfolding for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we live in a day that evil has been empowered.
Very much so.
And this is a time that we need to consider that we've been chosen to live during this moment. This was not something that, our birth was not accidental. It was chosen for this moment. And Yom Kippur is a great time to just make sure that we're living up to the reason that we were born. Well, Oak, have I will not wish you an easy fast.
Well, have a meaningful Yom Kippur.
Yes, you too.
Have a great connection with Hashem, and may we come out of this before Sukkot with a stronger sense of our personal missions and our commitment to fulfill them.
Sounds good. And as a programming note, we're not sure what will be next week. Possibly Hanok and Barry teaming up again because I'm going to be on the road. Part of my Sukkot this year is doing a wedding for a mutual friend up in Ohio. So that's
wonderful.
Yeah,
wonderful.
It is. It's great. I'm looking forward to it. So Hanok, shalom. We will talk soon.
Okay, bye-bye.